Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you. Might be a little bit shorter than normal, but nonetheless, we are still on the way to having a show. Now, Hawkeye isn't joining me tonight because he is not feeling above the weather. He's feeling under the weather. So send your healing thoughts and whatever to him because he needs it more than ever. He's got the flu bug, apparently, and he needs a little kick in the butt anyway to get better. Hoping for the best. Let's see, where am I? I got it. I'm running a little slow. Had problems at work, and I've been on the phone for 2 hours. So no dogs howling. Yeah, they're in the back sleeping. They know the time, and since I wasn't on time, they said, "I don't care. We're not howling." They must have been tired because they were outside running around for quite a while. But anyhow, it's a big hello to everybody. Lucky Stone, there you go. No dogs howling. Elderberry, yep. Good to see you all. Hello, everyone. Chris Smith, thank you. I haven't seen you in a while. Low switching to YouTube on Xbox. Sorry, yeah, we are not probably going to have a very long show. Beyond Truth, there you go. Get over there to Beyond Truth and subscribe over there where you can join me and Nina for shows on Sunday nights. It's going to be good. We got some really good guests lined up, really good shows. Beyond Truth, and with new logo and all kinds of other good stuff. So yes, terrific Tribal Tuesday. Yes, we are gonna have a big snowstorm over here in North Dakota. Apparently it's raining in some spots and it's cold in others. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but send your good wishes to David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers, who is feeling under the weather. And I'm doing my best tonight to bring you something. Anyway, well, I'm going to do some reading out of this book. It's all about short stories and wagons and pioneers and bad luck that befalls them. Now, we've been doing the stories in Oregon and what happened and all of these things. The traveling trip. I guess this would be our number 3 in the series, I guess you could call it. And it's all about what happened. They left with their wagons packed, oxen walking behind their food. We talked about the food they had along the prairie, the dustiness and people dying along the ways from cholera and dysentery. And gosh, it doesn't even sound fun, but yet they were so determined. And they were very determined to get to where they had to go. Really, they really had to be determined. Anyway, I found this one story that kind of sums it up. And if I find it here, I put it in one of these spots. But yeah, now you come. You didn't even howl. What kind of dog are you? And so it talks. I'm going to go through this because it was really kind of interesting. It's about this poor, the Sager family. Unfortunate people. Not everybody. Last week's episode was great. Anyone see 83 Yellowstone series? Oh yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, the Yellowstone. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen Yellowstone yet, but wait until it's all done and I'll buy the series because I love watching that stuff. So what do we got tonight? Okay. Well, this episode picks up right where the last one left off. We get over here to as soon as I move my cursor around here, I lost my cursor. Where is it? Anyway, gotta move it over here. Okay. Sorry. This is where David comes in handy because he starts talking about all kinds of good stuff and telling about all of these things, whatever. But anyway, we're gonna get right into it here. As soon as I find my notes, gotta have notes, His notes are good and tells me what I'm doing. But once I move this thing around, okay, so tonight we're talking about the story where the wagons. We've made it to Oregon, and most people know the journey. We did the river crossings, the broken wheels, the cholera, all of that stuff. But what happened after they got there? What happened to the people when they got there? They arrived in Oregon and Washington and California. Did they live happily ever after, or did they step into, much worse times? Well, when they got there, winter hit. They got hungry. They were in debt. They had, land laws they weren't expecting. All kinds of things. I mean, they just made the journey. They lost pretty much everything they had. They didn't come there with pockets full of money. They're lucky if they brought their oxen or the packs on their backs. Anyway, well, and then of course people wanted to fight over the lands, that once they got there, hey, everybody wants that land. And people were already living on it. And especially the natives were living there. And what happened to the natives? Well, the natives would fight back. They were pretty passive when they first came, but you're taking up our land. You're shooting the elk and the deer and plowing up the land and putting up fences and so forth. And so you're making cabins. You're cutting down all the trees. So, people were staking claims and the natives weren't happy. Well, settlement changed. The land, it changed, from fences, logging, plows, plowing up the land, chasing the animals away. Rivers, people would settle by rivers. Why? Because it was easy water. You didn't have to dig a well. Just, oh, look, there's a river. Go down the river and get the bucket of water. And the coast wasn't really empty. From Washington to Oregon to California, there was already people. Remember, the Spanish had already gotten into California and they were settling things. Yeah. Joanne says the difference was they had guns. Yes, they had guns. Yeah, the settlers brought guns. The Indians had bows and arrows. Not quite the fair fight. So when they got there, now all of the West Coast basically, and as they moved in, they had livestock, which overgrazed the land. There was overuse of the water. They brought, of all things, remember we were talking about diseases. They brought diseases, especially measles, and measles was the worst because the natives had no way to fight measles and smallpox, and that killed off lots and lots of natives. And we're going to be talking about that tonight on how it is that was, killing off the Indians and then made them mad. That was probably the worst thing. And there was a massacre because of it. On the Washington coast, we got the Salish, the Makah, the Quintil, the Ho, the Quintnot. And on the Oregon coast was the Tillamook, the Clastops, the Chinooks, and the Seasons, the Coos, the Serious Law, the Lower Umpqua, and I hope I'm saying all those right. I'm sure I'm not, but I'm trying really hard. On the California coast, we have the Tuwal, the Pomo, the groups of the Ohlone, the Chumash, I've heard of them, the Tongva, the Kenya, and more. Okay, what happened to these natives? Well, like I said, epidemics brought in from the population of settlers come in and brought diseases, and population loss for the natives was, unbelievable. Treaties were struck with the natives, especially in parts of Washington. Ongoing, it was put them on reservations, of course, or removal. Removal to reservations, especially in Western Oregon, Nez Perce. Of course, they wanted to relocate a lot of these natives all the way back to where, of all places, Oklahoma. Now, you know as well as I do that if you live in Washington or Oregon, it's nothing like Oklahoma. So you have to, take that into consideration because, hey, you can't move those people that far. Or you want to move them down to a southern area where it's just dry and desert. That's not good either. California's missions. We're going to talk about a little bit about missions in the Mexican area and the impacts that had on people. The thing is, the people didn't end up disappearing. They're still here today, but they were vastly reduced and they were put on reservations and separated from their families and the lands that they lived on. That's the bad part. So let's get into some of this. And I'm going to tell the story about this wagon train, which kind of leads up to a bunch of other stuff. And I thought it was very interesting. It tells the story about these people who literally ended up having the worst life ever, if you want to say so. My son is Tukam. Don't know how to spell. Okay. Joanne, thank you for coming tonight. Anyway, so we're gonna, and this is a really short story. Sorry, I'm gonna be looking at the book because I didn't take pictures and put it on here. But we're gonna talk about this family, and I'm gonna kind of skip over some places so we can get going. So this is in the summer of 1844. While traveling west on the Oregon Trail, the Sager family endured a seemingly endless string of unfortunate events. So they were leaving. They wanted to come to Oregon, and the father, Henry, headed for Oregon, leaving their home in Missouri far behind. And, but on June day, we'll start this out on a June day, the eldest of the 5 Sager girls caught her dress on the handle of an axe and slipped. Given that the oxen were such slow, methodical creatures, and it is amazing that it all seemed to happen so quickly. She heard her own screams. Her father heard her shouts and felt the wide iron rim of the wagon wheel roll over her left leg. The bones snapped and her body flooded with hot pain. Her right leg barely escaped the same treatment, being moved at an angle from the fall, and several of the other children saw it and began to cry. Wow. Yeah, you're a little girl. You're really young, and a big giant wagon weighing, 3,000 pounds or more rolls over the top of you. Yeah, what do you think you're doing? Your bones are breaking and life sucks. That's all I can say. So there we go. I'm trying to get back to here. Okay, that's all good. Anyway, so Henry, not knowing what to do, he did the best he could. He turned to his second oldest, Francis, who, well, anyway, his wife was already sick. Put it this way. Yes, this is bad. Henry shouted for his wife, screaming daughter out of their wagon. Another few seconds, the rear wheel would have rolled over her torso, so she just escaped death, almost surely killing her. Her hands trembled as he picked her in her little dress and matted into her wounds, and he yelled for his wife, knowing that she would be of no use. Why was she of no use? Well, she was already weak as the wagon was, and she was in the wagon cradling the baby, Rosanna, barely 2 months old. A wagon rollover. Remember how we were talking about wagon rollovers? A month before had knocked his wife unconscious and nearly killed her. Wow. They had a bunch of kids. So they had a bunch of kids. And so now he's got a 2-month-old baby, his wife who's sick in the wagon, another girl who just had her leg run over, and now another one that's younger than her trying to help. Well, anyway, they were screaming There was a lot of screaming. The injured girl focused on her father's face, and he was relieved, for she had full extent of a heavy wheel, and she was still, the skin of her thigh had been mashed and split as if it were a piece of overripe fruit. And you all know what that looks like. Um, he could see the bone poking through the skin in two spots, so she had a compound fracture. That's not good. If any of you are a doctor or nurse or something, you've probably seen that. I've never seen that, but it just sounds bad. And by the time the members of the wagon train had gathered and offered help, he dared not look up. He knew some of them thought he was a fool for all the accidents that had plagued his family, in addition to the wagon rollover in which they had all ended up scraped, bruised, and battered. The girls were shot by a sentry one night. Then twice they had troubles with so even they were actually shot by one of the sentries. So the kids are running around wild, put it that way. Apparently they were not well behaved. Anyway, the girls were shot by a sentry. Then twice they had troubles with children catching fire. Now that's a new one. The children were catching fire. Even as he tended his daughter, he prayed silently that Catherine's accident was the last of their misfortunes, but apparently it was not. She doesn't need a doctor. I can make it right. Henry Sager stared up the faces surrounding him, his travel companions, his neighbors on the trail these past months. Months they've been on the trail. Now, they were almost to Fort Laramie, and he felt that he knew them as well as he knew anyone, except perhaps his Naomi, other kid. But right now, he didn't seem to recognize them. They all stared at him as of accusing him, as though he has caused this to happen to poor Catherine, his eldest girl. And she was crying. She was coming around, Henry. She needs a doctor. Down the line and yelled for the doctor. There was one traveling somewhere in the train back behind us, a German named Henry. Or no, it was a German. They didn't tell what his name. Henry, the guy, the father, finished tending the girl, shoved away, and helped hands with the helping hands of women. When the doctor arrived, he inspected Sager's work and said he could do no better. All the fuss, though, Henry told them she didn't need a doctor. No, she don't need a doctor. I can do it. But apparently he must have been pretty good at doctoring things, because he fixed it up, and the doctor says that's about what I would have done anyway. The following weeks and months were a series of agonizing days for Catherine Sager as she endured the jolting, jarring journey of the wagon and her weakened mother and crying baby sister. Then, on August 28th, less than a month after Catherine's accident, Henry, the father, now succumbed to the camp fever. Typhoid, that's even worse. That had been creeping up on him for a few weeks, his frantic participation in a buffalo hunt. They buried him by the banks of a river and moved on. A year later, the family was informed that his grave had been violated and his body disrupted by a Shoshone hoping to scare up valuables. So even if you bury somebody, we talked about that, they bury you along the trail, or they bury you in the trail, or they burn a fire on top of you so that the Indians don't go and dig your body up and see if there's some trinkets left. And the rest, his bones were scattered and the coyotes ate the rest of them. Yeah, people, if you don't like listening, you can tune out, because this is kind of gross. But not to be outdone by her husband, within a month after his death, Naomi Sager was also laid down low by the typhoid, and she died, and well, she had scarlet fever too. She spent her last days flopping about in the unforgiving wagon, too ill to rise. And on September 11th, with her pulse nearly undetectable, she fluttered her eyes wide open and said, "Oh, Henry, if only you knew how we have suffered." At that point, do you think it was worth the trip? Maybe they should have just stayed in Missouri. Maybe they should have turned around after the wagon flipped over. You know, things like that. You got to think about that kind of stuff. Like, when do you call it no? Or do these people just really, really want to go that bad that they're willing to die for it? Okay, so fellow travelers, Mr. and Mrs. William Shaw, had promised the Sagers that they would make sure that the children were placed in the care of the Whitman, Missouri mission in Wapatu, Walla Walla, Washington. So, until the train drew close enough to the mission, the Shaws cared for the 7 newly orphaned youngsters. Wow, 7 of them. So there you go, 7 youngsters, and no father and no mother, both dead along the trail. Now they're orphans. And with the dwindling rations, a stretch of barren, forbidding landscape between Salmon Falls and Snake River, the tough terrain was matched only by frigid nighttime temperatures, so cold that one of the distraught orphans, little Hannah Louise, wandered alone from the train one night and was found nearly dead by hypothermia. Yeah, ain't that wonderful? In time, she recovered only to be captured by the Indians 3 years later and succumbed to measles. Wow. Okay, so this was the Sager family, which kind of relates to the next story I'm going to tell you. It's the Whitman Massacre. And I'm going to skip over that one. It talks about the Dahmer party. We don't want to hear about it. I did the Dahmer party. And then, so now the kids, all of them make it, the father and mother on the wagon train, they make it to Washington. Mother and father are dead. They got 7 orphans. The 7 orphans make it. They make it to the mission. And this is what happens at the mission. Okay, so we have the Whitmans. They started this mission. They came from Missouri too. They came out here, and Mr. Whitman had been ministering to the Indians, the Cayuse, and but the Cayuse weren't doing so good either. The measles had come, and their people were dying left and right. And the chief, Narcissa, his son was dying. His people were dying, and the chief came to Mr. Whitman and said, hey, he was mad. He's pounding on the door, and Mrs. Whitman says, hey, you better go and see this guy. And he invited the chief in. They sat down at the table, and he didn't know what to tell him because the chief looked so upset. So, of course, what solves everything? You know what solves everything? Well, he looked at their alarmed faces and he said, he closed the door and he says, I'll just read from the King James Bible and read some good verses, and that will make everything better. The Bible will fix it and God will bless you. Well, it settled them down a little bit, but not enough. And the chief was bad, and I'm waiting up for the suspense, but there was him, the chief, and another Indian, and there were some Indians outside the door and out in the yard, and Mr. Whitman didn't think too much of it, and he's reading out of the good Bible to the Indians, thinking that these Bible verses will solve everything for you. The good Lord will bless you. All is good. Well, one of the chief walked behind him, grabbed his tomahawk, and, well, you know what he did? He split Mr. Whitman in the head. Yeah. Then he, oh boy, this was not good. Anyway, this was not good. He latched the door, groping brown arm forced through the crack. And okay, so Mrs. Whitman. Okay, so Whitman could now see his face of the angry, grieving father, the face of a man who could not understand why whites rarely died of the disease, but the Indians seemed to have no immunity to it at all, which is true. It seemed that they were never stirred up so much. But anyway, the man could not endure anymore. Let's see, I'm going to get to the good part. So he's reading out of the Bible to the good book. I guess this is where it comes in. And it says, Tomas, one of the Indians, had angled around behind Whitman while Tinacluk engaged the doctor in conversation at the table. What good was talk now that the three of his friends' children were dead of the white man's measles? Barely half of his people were left alive who were but a month ago. That's how fast they were dying. And the proud band of the Cayuse warriors and families, 350 strong. This never happened before, and Whitman brought more and more whites to take away the Cayuse hunting grounds. This Whitman was an evil and must be stopped, and according to Cayuse custom, if a healer failed at his task, the healer's life was to be taken in retribution for the deaths he had failed to prevent. Well, I'll tell you what, if doctors did that today, we'd have a lot better doctors and a lot less deaths, wouldn't we? They would actually be trying to cure you instead of, well, that one didn't work out. That's why they're practicing. It's always a practicing doctor. Tomas looked down at the head of the man seated in front of him. I'm just reading it. I just told you what happened, but in nodding and speaking more words that would do no good now. People were dead and more would soon die. He saw Whitman's hand reach for the Bible and the cause of it all. At first, there were only a few bringing their beliefs, like their faith with them, and some said it was good faith. One of his people could understand, but then others came, and soon more, and then with them they brought disease, and now his people were treated like camp dogs, while the new arrivals, the settlers that were, they called themselves, spoiled the land, taking all the meat and leaving none for the Cayuse. Remember, there was 350 Cayuse, and there was thousands and thousands. Remember, we told you that 500,000 settlers came across, but now there's these Cayuse that are 350, and they have nothing because the white man, is taking it all. The white doctor's hand spread wide on the black book, his thumb reaching to open to all those words, and Tomas felt nothing but anger for the words, and he would do no good. The hate boiled him and rising in his guts and his head. In one swift motion, his hand slipped the tomahawk from his belt, raised it high, and drove it downward straight into the cursed white man's head. Now, of course, Jim Bridger's half-white daughter screamed behind him. Then, this house was full of people, wasn't it? Tinacluk stood slashing at Whitman's face with his long knife. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The blood slapped Tomas like rain. The chief rounded the table, jammed his rifle in Whitman's neck, and then there was a shot straight into the neck, and Whitman flipped from the chair he was sitting in. Mary Ann Bridger ran for the door to the other room, shouting. Well, of course she would be. They're killing Papa. The Tomas didn't care. Tinacluk finally saw the truth. The door saying they were killing Marcus. She flung the door wide, and Tinacluk and Tomas were stumbling outside, shouting as if they were drunk. I can imagine. Woo, Marcus lay sprawled on his back on the floor, his face a mask of blood. His jaw moved and red bubbles rose and popped through the holes in his neck. Yeah, he was stabbed and shot. What more do you want? My gosh, this guy's dying. He's dying. Narcissa dropped to her knees, that's his wife. The screams of the children surrounding her as they saw the adopted father's condition. She put a hand to his chest and whispered close to him, "My love, don't leave me." I will make you better. I will nurse you to health, and we can leave here, my love. Screams and shouts from outside snapped from her revive. The children, she ordered them upstairs to barricade themselves in. Through the window, she saw men, women, and children, some her own, adopted young, and running across the yard. They were being chased by the Cayuse men, they were shouting with axes held high. They had other plans for those children. A second later, she felt a tremendous pain in her chest, and she dropped to her knees beside her husband. Though she knew she'd been shot, Narcissa rose and struggled up the stairs after the children. Prayer was the only thing she could think to do. Soon they heard wood tearing, glasses were smashing, and the Indians shouting, "The house will be burned around you. Come downstairs," they shouted. This was the voice of an old friend among the Cayuse. He would not lie to them. Narcissa was brought outside, carried on one of those things, a settee, and then she screamed. The last thing she saw was a raging ring of Cayuse men staring at her with narrow eyes, rifles pointed at her, and then they opened fire. Wow. Yeah, they didn't want her to live. Her body pitched, jerked, flopped to the ground. One young Cayuse who had attended her husband's sermons in the past lashed Narcissa's lifeless face over and over again with a riding crop. Okay. So, such gruesome scenes occurred throughout the mission. By day's end, on November 29th, 1847, 11 men, 1 woman, 2 children lay dead. 3 more children, stricken with measles, died from their lack of care. Among the murdered were 2 of the Sager children. See how I segued that in? The Sager children, there were 7 of them, and 2 of them were dead now. And they were, anyway, before the Oregon Trail. In all, 47 survivors were taken captive and endured a month of hardship and included malnutrition and sexual assault before being ransomed by officials of the Hudson Bay Company on the Columbus River, 20 miles downstream. Within weeks, mountain man Joe Meek, whose half-breed daughter had been among the murdered, we talked about Joe Meek here before. Oh, there's Susie Q. Nice to see you. Hey, that rhymes. Anyway, Joe Meek trekked all the way to Washington, D.C., and demanded to see his cousin by marriage, President Polk. As a result, and after much legislative wrangling, Oregon was established as a territory on August 14, 1847, with Joe Meek as U.S. Marshal eventually, after being relentlessly pursued for 2 years, and 5 perpetrators of the Whitman Massacre, Tomas and Tinuk, among them, gave themselves over to the white authorities, and they were tried and hanged. There you go. So, that's kind of how it goes. That's, this, it's funny, but it isn't funny. So, yeah, Susie, we had a few problems, and send your best wishes to Hawkeye, who is feeling under the weather. He has the bug, so he's not feeling well. He's not making it tonight. So no story from him. Sorry, everybody. No cards either. Oh my. But I'm trying to finish up my Oregon Trail. Maybe we'll be back next week. Hey, it happens to all of us. So as we get going here, like I said, that's the life of these travelers. Like I said, they made it all the way there, and just to be killed off, you do all these things, and anyway. So who lived and where? Let's go on about some of these places and who these Indians were. Makah people are sailing, are coming to Washington and Oregon and California. So let's talk about what natives lived there and what happened to them. The Makah were seafaring people of the Olympic Peninsula, northwest tip shaped by the Pacific itself, storm waters and kelp beds, sea mammals, and deep offshore fishing. Whaling wasn't a side note, it was a major part of their cultural life. And it was their identity. And in the mid 1800s, and after Makah life was pressured by U.S. expansion, changing regulations, and long legal fights over the excess of treaty rights, even today, their treaty reserved relationship to whaling and marine harvesting remains a public issue, which tells you how long the land and life questions echo. So, you see what I mean? These people, that's what they've been doing forever. When the settlers arrived, the biggest pressure points were the access to fisheries. Remember, there wasn't many of these people, but, people were going to build boats and go out and nets. And, the white man had systems how to catch tons of fish, not a 2 or 3 fish, but they would build big boats and go out and catch thousands of fish, leaving none for the natives, of course. Made the coast Salish life impossible. A lot of the later history on the Puget Sound revolves around whether treaty promises and unusual custom practices actually got honored in real life, which, treaties were made to be broken, as they'd say. Now we go to Southwest Washington coast, the Quinnic or coastal rainforest people, whose traditional world is built around river mouths, ocean harvests, and forest resources. Their homeland sits in a place where the environment is rich, but also where outside industries, settlement logging, commercial fishing, and development historically created constant pressure on their resources and access. Well, of course it did. These people, they didn't get a choice. They were just, let's, okay. Okay, I'm moving down here. We're going to share screen. So let's get rid of some of this stuff and share screen so maybe you can see some of this. And go to that. There we go. Anyway. Sorry. Work calls. Trying to figure all this stuff out. It's been a bad night at work for all these things. Lots of stuff going on. But I'm doing the best I can trying to. Video froze. Sorry. We're going to put up screen then. Robert is frozen. Must be enough water for the the data center. Yeah, I know. I got to get a data center in here to unfreeze the water. Thank you guys for all joining me tonight. Yes, Susie Q says, praying for David. Yes, send him healing, right, Susie Q? Healing to David, though. Let's get him better. Yeah, sorry about that. Now you get to see the little picture of me. But anyway, we're going to point to some of this map stuff, and we're going to talk about some of these Indians. Yeah, usually when I flip the screens here, then it kind of goes a little wonky, so I might freeze up again. But hey, that's all right. I got to figure out which one I was on. Oh, okay. Now we go to Oregon, and we got the Chukin people, and it's over by the Columbia River here. You can kind of see it up there if you know where the Columbia River is. That's where the Oregon Trail would come in and go down, and that's where Lewis and Clark went. Well, along the lower Columbia, the Chinookan people were famous traders. They were river people at a continental crossroads. Their world was commerce. We talked about them with the Nez Perce. And they were diplomats by canoe, fish shells, woven goods, and trade routes. Yeah, because these people lived along the river and they would trade with all the other tribes, which is probably a cool thing. And they linked the coast and the interiors long before the Americans showed up. One telltale sign that the trading world of the Chinook, the jargon people, a trade language that spread wildly around the Pacific Northwest, especially from the lower Columbia, because so many people, different people, and newcomers needed a common tongue. So they used this their language apparently out there. And then we have northern Oregon coast. Each one has their own. So we got the Tillamook were Salish speaking coastal people whose lives were centered on bays, rivers, mouths. And remember that this is the Northwest, and it's like what do you call it? Rainforest country, only colder. Oregon's coast was wet, resource rich. Their place names and villages patterns were tied to water, tide, flats, salmon streams, and travel by canoe. After heavy settler arrival, the coast changed fast because white people like to settle on the coast, build houses, put docks in for ships. The natives, you go down the way and you can fish down there. Because we got big boats over here, and we got train tracks and houses and cities, and that's not a place for an Indian. Anyway, towns grew and outsider controlled access came to the rivers and the bays that had always been to pantry, because they got to have someplace to eat. So these are fish eating people. Their livestock is elk and deer. The Tillamook country is a clean example of how settlement isn't just new neighbors, it's a new rule book, food and movement. So you take away the food, you dam up the rivers, and now the canoe doesn't do you much good because, people are along the river and they don't want you to land on their land. And, And then we got the Confederated Tribes of the Celtese Indians, Central Oregon coastal range. The Celtese is an important because it represented what happened to many Western Oregon people, multiple tribes and bands forced together, because the white man didn't know what tribes meant. They just said, you're an Indian. Put them on this. Here's a little chunk of land. You all live there together. And then the Indians were removed. They were consolidated on the reservations and made into confederated tribes. Well, anyway, there was a lot of diversity, and the ancestors from many groups and many languages gathered into one reservation system. It says here, for your land loss and new beginnings theme. The shrinking of their lands and their rights. Yes, it wasn't good. Okay, now we're going to move to Southwest Oregon, the coast and the river country, with the Coquille. Let's get that out. Coquille homeland is a southern Oregon, forest, rivers, and coast where salmon runs and tide flats. Get communities have been there for generations. The tribe's own history highlights and how, got devastated by disease as it moved westward, and the expansion hammered their population and land base, and how treaty promises were broken left and right and unfulfilled. The settlers that arrived for milk and honey, they got their milk and honey and took it away from the natives. That's what they did. That forced native communities to survive, and put them in survival mode on their own homelands. Now we go to California. Let's take the trip over to California, to the Towandi, far northern California coast, over by the Smith River area. And for all of you over there in the I can't even speak. Well, their history is sharp. Coast story example, because Northern California settlement pressure often came brutally fast, especially when the gold rush came in, and the violence, removals, and repeated displacement, followed by long work of rebuilding community. And so when the 49ers came, even more people came, and as more people came, they kicked the people out. And they came in fast, and the faster they came in, was the Confederation. Oh, what was the Confederation called then? Sorry, I can't look at all these screens at the same time. It's really hard to do. Sorry. What was the federation called? Oh, let's go up. Computer ain't working so good. The Confederation was called, this is for Elderberry, it was called Confederated Tribes of the Siletz, which is spelled Siletz, Indians. Confederated Tribes of the Siletz. Siles, I don't know, something like that. I know I'm mispronouncing it some way or another, but I don't see them on this map. But they're here somewhere, I'm sure. No, I don't see it on there, but they are there. There was a Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. I'll call them Siletz. Okay, so let's move on. Now we got these the Towandikini Indians, and they were from Northern California. We just talked about them. They were chased out by the gold rush. Then we have the Yurok Indians, Northern California, over by the Klamath River. The York are a major river and coastal people of Northern California. And today, York tribes describes itself as the largest tribe in California, with thousands enrolled members and active tribal governance. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Now we're going to move over by San Francisco Bay region, the Holeone. The Holeone are a collection of many related communities historically spread around San Francisco Bay and nearby coastal valleys. Well, they don't exist today. Man, they probably couldn't afford the rent over in San Francisco. They lived in permanent villages, sites with seasonal gatherings, patterns deeply tied into wetlands and shorelines and oaklands. The Holeone history is inseparable from the Spanish mission era and later American expansion. Yes, remember, over by San Francisco, that was Spanish governed. That was Spain. They were speaking Spanish, and the Spanish was converting all these natives into Christian Bible thumpers. Anyway, they were forced to relocate, these people were. Their cultural suppression, especially by the missions, and insurance, yet the Holeone people and the culture persists today with highly visible revitalization work on their native language and their public presence. Okay, so now we're going to move over to Santa Barbara. Okay, the Chumash people. The Chumash were famous coastal people of the Santa Barbara Channel area with strong island and ocean connections. One of their best known technologies is the tumal, a plank canoe, tradition associated with ocean travel across the channel. Something that tells you how marine time and interconnected their world was with the ocean. The communities of the Chumash face the same coastal pressures, especially with the missionization of the churches. The Chumash identity and cultural practices remain very present in today's regions of living. And now we're going to move over to the greater Los Angeles Basin. Can you believe it? Indians actually lived in the Los Angeles Basin at one time. It's hard to believe that, but they did. The Tongva, often referred to in historical sources as the Gabrielio Tongva, are the indigenous people of the Los Angeles Basin region with ancestral boundaries that include coastal areas and nearby Channel Islands. Wow. Okay, so now we're moving down the coast of California. We're going to San Diego and Baja. Yeah, it's hard to imagine. There was Indians even down there. The Kune are the borderland people whose homelands span the San Diego region into Baja, California. Historically, they were organized in bands with strong ties to specific territories and water sources. Exactly the kind of local land relationship that ran headlong into the mission system, again, the missions, and later American settlement patterns. Of course, everybody wants to settle around a pond, a lake, a water resource. Yeah, well, anyway, the Kootenai history lets you talk about missions and borders and changing governments. Yes, from the Spanish to the Americans. Well, let's go. Speaking of the missions, we're going to talk a little bit about the mission system. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Susie Q. John Price is in the house. Thank you for joining us, John Price. Dave's not here, man. Yeah, no, he's feeling ill today. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he's ill today, and Susie Q, I'll be listening. Right, must rest though. Oh yeah. Well, thank you for listening. I'm doing my best here to make up for not having David here tonight, so I'm doing what I can. But we're going to talk a little bit about the missions, the Spanish mission system, especially in California and earlier places like Baja California. We were just talking about those Indians. Was huge turning point for coastal native peoples. You're right that it had a good and bad elements. It was good, but it was bad. What the missions were trying to do, the official pitch was conversion. Of course, religion is always about conversion. You believe what we want you to believe, and also about civilizing the natives. You're a savage. We're going to civilize you, put a fork and knife in your hand, make you sit at a table, eat food, cook it over a fire, and eat like a normal human being. Cut your hair and, act like a human. Go to church, pray to God, read the Bible, blah, blah, blah. And that's your interpretation of it. So their mission was to what? Of course, bring people to Christianity, teach them Spanish language and European farming and trading and, do all of that stuff. Just like being a European. Native converts were called neophytes, I guess, something like that. Neophytes. Once baptized, they were generally expected to live at the mission and follow mission rules. Ooh, like a convert, like a big cult. Missions weren't just churches. They were economic and political centers tied to Spain's expansion, backed by soldiers and colonial authorities. The matters because this is why the missions weren't just religion. It was a political system. It was a shopping system. It was a civilization system. Okay, so forced relocation and cultural disruption. Okay, many native people were drawn into or pressured in some way or form, sometimes by desperation, after disease and disruption of their life. And then they were expected to abandon their old ways of life. Their language, don't use your own language. You speak Spanish now. Don't do your ceremonies. Their marriage patterns. They were used to taking multiple wives. Well, not so much anymore. One per customer. Seasonal movement and traditional leadership systems were gone. So take away what they believed and give them some European ways. I wish they'd bring back that multiple marriage system. That would be good. Of course, all the women are out there cussing at me now saying, hey, why can't I marry two guys? No. Why is the guy marry two women? Get more housework done. I know I'm going to get a backlash for that. Put your comments in below. Labor control. Work was not optional there. At the mission life depended on native labor. It always boils down to who's the slave, right? They were building the mission complexes and tending the fields and the livestock and producing the goods. Yes, that's right. Those nice missionaries were teaching those Indians how to work. We'll teach you how to farm. Now go out there and plow the field. And then you harvest the corn. Build this house. We'll teach you all this good stuff. Well, anyway, California, it was forced labor, basically. It was disease and cultural suppression as were drivers of this catastrophic death mission they were on. Anyway, disease among the Indians, we talked about that already. And, there was a lot of it. Concentrating people in missions made it worse because of the poor sanitation, their dietary stress. Remember, these people were used to eating nuts and berries and small animals or deer or elk and going hunting and living in, little small settlements of 50 or 25 people. And now all of a sudden you have, big missions with hundreds of people in there and one outhouse kind of thing. Maybe they had a two-holer, but people, the natives didn't understand this stuff. Remember, it was go poop in the woods, and now it's go poop in the two-hole outhouse and wash your hands. Oh, we used to bathe in the river, but now we can't bathe in the river. We've got all these clothes we're wearing, and we got to pray to the Lord and go to the thing and do all these things. And well, what happens that? Well, now we're going to feed you some different food you're not used to. You're going to get wheat and flour, going to get bread and things like that. We're going to make you eat bread. Indians don't do good on flour and bread. They're just not cut out for that. They're nuts and berries. You know what I'm saying? But then the diseases came from the old world and there was massive death. Yeah, sorry. They say up to 70,000 native people died during the mission era. And well, they had a real high mortality rate, especially among the baptized population. It means if you converted, you even had a better chance of dying. Ain't that wonderful? Hey, why don't you get baptized and come live in a mission? You too might die next week. I can't make this stuff up. Well, he says, I have one wife. That's too many for me. Yeah. Can't afford one, never mind many. Yes. I love that. Yeah. Which wife is the controlling wife? That's the question, especially nowadays. Nowadays, the woman likes to be, tell my husband, they say there's always a good woman behind every man. Well, maybe there's when you get 2 or 3 or 4 wives, there's like 3 or 4 good women behind every man. Well, I don't know. That guy's coming and going. Can you imagine how hard he has to work just to provide for them? I don't know. There's good and bad things to all of it. You know what I mean? It could be worse. It could be worse. Can't imagine how we used to smell like. Yeah. Well, you got to remember, these people were put on the mission. They probably were given, clothes. You got to wear European clothes, and you're not going down to the river to bathe every day like they probably did. Just jump in the river and go bathe and sit out in the sun. Remember, Indians had a season for everything, and man has an hourly thing for everything. You go to work, you'll find out real quick if you don't believe me. So, anyway, of course, if you live at the mission, you get punished, and you get loss of freedom because you're coming to live at the mission. Political. This is where bad comes unavoidable in the record. Once you were baptized, many native people were not free to come and go as they wished. That had to be hard. And punishment systems were used to enforce mission discipline. Then, oh man, can you imagine that? Well, you did bad. We're gonna. What do they do? Flog them? I guess, don't they? If you're bad, those Christian people flog you, or I'm sure they didn't nail you to the cross or something, but they probably did other things. What was good for these native people anyway? Doesn't even sound like they had a good life. It's like, oh my God, the white men are coming. I'm a native. I might as well just jump in the river, because life isn't doing them any good at all. Okay. What did the white people come and do for the people? Gave them some access to food, different foods, livestock during famine years. That's one of the things the natives didn't do. They just lived from year to year. But if you raise livestock like chickens, you got eggs all the time. If you raise cattle, you had food in your backyard. You didn't have to go hunting for it when it wasn't available. Things like that. The white man gave new alliances for protection, like, we brought guns for them from their enemies, protection. But, I mean, really, if you really think about it, was it protection? I mean, more people died from, that protection than would have died if they didn't have that protection, I guess. You could look at it that way. They brought literacy, learning them how to read and write, new forms of religious practice. And I don't think they were really too up on, because I'm sure they had their own religious practice. So we're going to take away theirs and we're going to give them ours. Yeah. I don't think that's the best way to look at it. And most importantly, Native people were not passive. They negotiated, they adapted, they resisted, they preserved practices quietly. They ran away and sometimes rose in revolt. They had motivations, their motivations varied. We'll never know every individual reason. Someone entered a community and, had different ideas. That's all it boiled down to. They got sick of living under the mission's weight of do what we say. You're baptized now. You're part of the thing. Missions brought major population loss to the Indians by, cramming them all together. And when the disease went through, they dropped like flies. Also, once they went to the mission, they lost the land that they lived on, because now they're not living out there, which made it better for the white man to go out there and claim that land. Nobody lives here. We're going to settle here. And it disrupted their cultural activities forever, probably even to this day. So, what did we learn by all of this? Having a good home. Yeah. Scotland, where cobblestone streets, I can still remember the smell. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. Smelled like home. Actually, I miss that smell. Had a great childhood and a good home. I'm glad you had a great childhood and a good home. That's so cool. So anyway, with all of that, we are about finished with this. I think that was my last slide I had. I had a whole bunch, but I ran out of slides. I ran out of time because I've been kind of busy and David's sick. So we're going to just move to the end and call it a day. And but I was in NOLA 2015. So remember the smell of Bourbon Street. Bourbon Street. Good deal. Anyway, the idea is that these natives were brought in by the missions. They were baptized. They were encouraged to stay at the missions and learn the word of God, learn how to build houses and grow crops and tend to animals and do all of those good things. And that's great. But the but part is it changed their way of life. It wasn't how they lived. They didn't have any protections against measles, smallpox, any of that other stuff. Pheromones under the arm. Don't worry, I didn't put any deodorant on Joanne. I guess you'd probably be attracted to me then. I don't tend to wear deodorant when I go to work because I'm all by myself all day. So I probably give out quite the odor. Anyway, nonetheless, animal soul card choice. No, Lucky, he ain't here tonight. No cards tonight. Sorry. No cards tonight, but I do have, wait a minute, I have cards. I have my cards, and I don't know what cards he has, but I have a thing, and so I will pull a card tonight. I'm not as good as David. He's got stuff, and I don't know what cards I have, but this is the native book of cards I have. It's called the Sacred Path cards right here. Sacred Path cards. That's what I got for you tonight. because that's about as close as I'm going to get. Got this cool little design on the back. But read my choices. I don't think we get cards. Yes, cards. But read my choices. Oh, no, Robert. What, you don't want cards? You want cards? Anyway. Okay, I'm going to shuffle the deck here, and Spirit is going to pick one card. Read my choices. Lucky, are you going to pull cards tonight? Animal soul card choice. Griffin, Sphinx, Cyclops, Werewolf, and Gorilla. Oh, I want Gorilla. There you go. There you go. Cyclops, Griffin, Cyclops, Werewolf, and Gorilla. Good ones. Good ones. I like it. I like it. Okay. And the top card gets it tonight. And that is, oh, not the card I want. Yeah, that's telling me that that's a card. Who made it? It's got to be this card then. And this is Vision Quest. That's what we're going on. We're going on a Vision Quest. Seeking and finding. Number 3, right in the beginning. Oh boy. Okay, as soon as I find the thing, piece. I get to the thing. 2, 3. Okay. Where is the thing for the cards? Oh, here we go. 23, 17, 11, 11, and 9. I'm getting closer. Oh, come on. 1. I got to 1. I need number 3. Oh, Vision Quest. Not quite the same as David's cards, which, hey, sometimes we got to mix it up. Come on, we're going to mix it up. New Moon Eclipse, yes. Old Spice. Old Spice. Yes, Old Spice smells good. I love me a good smell, man. I miss aftershave. Some women do like the aftershave, though. They really do. Happy new moon and eclipse. Okay, here's your Vision Quest tonight. This is what we have, the Vision Quest. The Vision Quest is one of the oldest tools used by tribal people to seek direction for life under the guidance of the medicine man. The seeker is sent to a remote location, fast and pray for 3 to 4 days. The result of his activity, which is called the going on the hill by the Sioux, a further undertaking of your place in the pathway to the world. The great mystery gives a sacred medicine to the helpers permission to come in a vision form to the person who is vision questing. The spirit of the animal, tree, a stone, the moon, the stars, or the ancestor who appears will be an ally or a guide during the seeker's walk. And it will protect that person. Another aspect of the vision involves harnessing the energy presented to the seeker in the form of personal talents. If these gifts are used properly, they may allow a new type of growth potential throughout the seeker's life. The path that should be followed to develop these talents. So basically here, what does it say here? Okay. Speaks of a new direction. So new direction for you vision questers. It says you need personal growth. You need to find the truth. So get your truth together, find your personal growth, and that'll lead you in the right direction. It says, that will remove your personal confusion. So just go on a vision quest of your own. It tells that this card tells you that your life needs to be a little more clarified through the vision. That's right. Now then ask for some assistance from your allies or your guides or your ancestors or your spirit guide. Remember, we all talked about what's your spirit guide. Is it a squirrel, a mouse? I was getting there for baby. Anyway, so find your truth through your spirit guide. He will guide you. That will help you find your personal answers and guide you on your path to find the truth to whatever you need to know. Anyway, it says it'll remove all your doubt by allowing your truth to emerge. Remember, in seeking, you will find answers. You are willing to accept them and recognize the truth when it comes to you. Be an acceptance, no matter what it is. Find your inner knowing. So, I guess that makes sense. I get it. So, be willing to accept your vision for whatever it may be, good or bad. And also find your truth. What truth is it that you're looking for? Let your spirit guide your way. Now, I know it's hard to just have a spirit guide and think that he's going to guide you on your way, but you have to do the work. And once you get to do the work, your spirit guide will guide you on the way. You will find that knowledge and truth that you're looking for. But remember to keep your eyes open and embrace it when you find it, because most people looking for truth will find that truth and pass it by. You have to recognize it when it's right there for you. So you get what I'm saying? You have to do the work. You have to look, and you have to be able to recognize the truth. Use your inner knowing. Now, that's the best I can do kind of with the cards, because, David, he's the kind of the professional on that. And my card reading is a long ways from that, but I'm doing the best I can, especially with the spirit, the one we're on, use your spirit guides, find your truth, find your sacred medicine. Anyway, with all of that, I just, sorry that the Hawkeye ain't on tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Remember, once you were on the Oregon Trail, it was a trail of misery, death, destruction, disease. If you finally made it to Oregon, you ended up there broke. Yeah, broke. Probably with a busted wagon and a couple of oxen. And you had to carve out some land for yourself amongst the natives that already lived there. Now, they didn't like you. They kind of hated you. And then you still had to survive. You had to get a job or make money somehow, have a farm. Hopefully you brought some seeds with you or something. You had a lot of hard work ahead of you. Building a cabin, staking out the claim, finding food for your family. And then after all of that, you could finally rest and relax. And hopefully you didn't get massacred by some cayuse coming out of the woodlands looking for redemption over all the disease that you yourself probably brought with you. Yeah. And now, if you live in any of those places like San Francisco or Los Angeles, and you pass that land down from one generation to the other, and now your great-great-grandchildren own that land, well, they're mighty rich, because houses sell for $1 million over there. And or more. So, but anyway, with that, everybody, we're going to sign off a little early, but thank you for coming. Hopefully your field wasn't full of rocks and clay. Yes, no rocks and clay. And if you haven't caught the Saturday show when we did about the computer stuff, where my little cursor is, my cursor ain't working so good. I was going to say, you caught today's, there it is. Isn't it working? Oh, there it is. It ain't moving. I don't know why my thing ain't working. But anyway, if you didn't catch Saturday's show with me and Lucky on Saturday, we were talking about computers. I know it's a far stretch from Native Americans, but that was a good show. Got a lot of views on it already. one of the top shows I did in quite a while. So thank you, Lucky, for joining me that night. And we had Beyond Truth on Sunday, so go check that out if you've missed that. And with that, we will be back on Saturday again for another great night. Oh boy, what's to come? I haven't even picked out a subject yet, but if you want to talk about something, let me know, and we'll be right here all day long, or all night long, or whenever it is. But we'll be talking about something. And with that, everybody, remember, go out and do something nice for somebody. Remember, it's going to be eclipse or the moon thing or something going on. And better get out there and check that out. Yeah, join us this weekend on Beyond Truth on Sunday night on Nina's channel. Beyond Truth, all rebranded and everything. Great. Go over to the StreamYard thing, get some new merch. She'll be putting out a video pretty soon. Days are flying by, so get ready for that. Have a great week, Soul Tribe, says Lucky. Thank you. And my cursor thing has just quit working, and I don't know why it's not moving. I'm just having, there it goes. Now we're going. Now have a great week. There we go. I fixed it. You still have time to cook. Yeah, I know. I got to get to bed early. I got to go to work in the morning. I can't stay up 24 hours a day, but hey, it's great. Oh yeah, it's a full moon eclipse there. Later, everyone. Thank you, Elderberry, for joining us. Thank you, Nina, for being here. And yep, it's a big eclipse. Remember, all the links and stuff are down and below in the description below if you want to check anything out. If you want to be on the show, if you want to do anything, send me a comment, put it in the comments below. I try to do the best I can, and we will see you soon. Remember to do something nice for somebody, smile at somebody. Remember to be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.